Morning, everybody. Thanks again for joining another one of our e-seminar series. My name is Ryan Johnson. I'm a field sales engineer for North America with Senstar, and I'll be hosting today's e-seminar series on how to connect Senstar PIDS systems to Symphony. I'm also joined by a couple of my colleagues. Daryl Jackson, who was with me on another e-webinar series, is here again. He's a sales engineer for Senstar. And then we also have Mark Clemens, who's with us as a sales engineer as well, and he works with our perimeter products and has been around for a long time and is very well versed in the technology. We'll be able to help answer any questions. So to that point, I did want to do just a brief introduction to what we're going to be talking about today. So we'll go into the agenda. And the agenda here shows we're going to talk a little bit about what is Network Manager, what it does, what it allows us to do. We'll walk through a little bit of the basic setup and overview of Network Manager. We're not going to dive into the weeds of how to set it up and configure every little fine detail, but it'll give you a really good idea of how to get Network Manager connected into Symphony. We'll also show you the integration of Network Manager into Symphony. So this would be once Network Manager is configured on that end, how we have to configure Symphony through server configuration to receive the data coming from Network Manager. We'll create a rule. This allows us to fire off status or zone alarms. So the side on Symphony that will allow us to generate activity and visual awareness for the operators. And then lastly, we'll just go through a brief live demonstration of what happens when a point or a zone is tripped. We'll be using the Network Manager simulator for this. And then we will show you the different causation within the Symphony client. So you'll see a lot of different components and how they're affected by the alarms that we do generate from Network Manager. So just to give you a little bit of an overview on what is Network Manager. Network Manager is installed as a service on a server and not as an application. So when, if, how, or at some point when Mother Nature takes over, the service will automatically restart. So this is pretty common in the security industry. We just wanted to make it a point that it is installed and it runs as a Windows service from a security standpoint, and fault tolerance and all that other stuff is built in because it will automatically restart and continue on its way once communication has been reestablished. So that's a fairly important thing to note, is that it does run as a service. The Network Manager front panel is the common interface for all Senstar network sensors like FlexZone, Fiber Patrol, LM100, Omnitrax, and the other sensors we sell. So if you have a specific network type, those network sensors would be considered one of the Network Manager connections that you have. So you could have a couple of different network types all lined up and running through Network Manager. The Network Manager software communicates directly with the Senstar sensors, and it provides a common IP interface for use by security management systems. Now, you'll also hear us refer to those as an SMS. You'll also see those noted throughout the Network Manager front panel and the simulator as an SMS. So that's what that stands for, is Security Management System. The management system we'll be working with today is Senstar Symphony. You'll also be able to connect Network Manager to physical security information management systems, or what is known in the industry as a PSIM. It also provides an access point through which sensor configuration tools can remotely access individual sensors. Network Manager can reside on the same PC as the management software. So today I'm running in my environment both Network Manager and Senstar Symphony on the same server. Or you can install Network Manager if you have a lot of Network Manager instances. Let's say you're using the full 10, you could install those on a dedicated PC as well. And so Network Manager connects to the network sensors via a gateway hardware, and that connection or media type is either 422 fiber or Ethernet. And just lastly on this point here is Network Manager is not only a point of integration just for Senstar Symphony. Today we just wanted to show you the value add and the benefits that you get by integrating Network Manager to Symphony. If you didn't have Symphony, you could integrate with other parties like Genetec, Milestone, and other competitive product out there. But today you'll see the value in integrating it with Senstar Symphony. Okay, so I'm going to close out of the presentation here, and I'm going to pull up the Network Manager simulator for you so that you can see what it looks like and some of the points that you'll be working with. So here's the Network Manager simulator, and it's very similar to the Network Manager front panel. And there's a couple of different things that we need to make note of because they're very important when you're integrating them into Symphony. So first is the ID. The ID identifies what Network Manager you're working with or what network you're working with. So you can have up to 10. And today we're just going to be working with unit ID number 1. So that's why you see here in the ID box, the unit ID number 1. So the network that we're working with today is a silver network. And we've selected that. And so all of the nodes that we add to the silver network are going to be silver network products. If you had Fiber Patrol, you'll see that here. And the only thing you would connect under Fiber Patrol would be a sensor unit. So again, you have to select the network type that you're working with our perimeter intrusion products, and then you can add your nodes. The way that you add a node is very simple. You just double click on it and it'll open up a window and it'll say, what node am I working with? And then you select from the list. So maybe you have LM100, maybe you have an FP400. Today, I'm going to work with an FC60, FlexZone 60. I like to show this one. It's got some ranging technology. And so it does a pretty good job in a demonstration showing how it works within Symphony. Okay, so we've got the FlexZone 60 in here and we select OK. And that's the only node we're going to add today. That gives us plenty of points. But again, if you had more, you could just double click on node 2. You could select that node type as well and bring that point in. Okay. And now back to the SMS side. So Security Management Systems, SMS. This is the IP address. The first SMS is the IP address of my local server. So this is where I'm going to be sending the data to. So if you had 2 SMS connections, or you're like me and you want to have redundancy here, I've added a third SMS, which could be my loopback or localhost address. So you take the IP address of the server that you want to send the communication to. For us today, it's Senstar Symphony. And you put the IP address in here for SMS 1, and that's where you're going to be sending the communication to. Okay. So UCM, this is just kind of another plug for our product, the UCM Universal Configuration Module. That's on my local machine as well, so I've just got my loopback address in there as well. So these are some of the critical points. First, we talked about the ID. You have to have the ID with the unit that you're working with or the network manager that you're working with. You add the nodes here on the right after you've selected your network, and then where am I sending my data, which is the SMS IP address. Okay. So once all of this has been done, you just hit save and restart. What this is going to do is it's just going to make sure that those new nodes are saved and it's configured properly, and that now we can work with them here as they would be listed under the nodes in the simulator. Same thing for the front panel. Okay, so now that we've got those, if I was to select it, you'll see that once I select it, it brings up the FC60. And we'll do a bit more with this later in the presentation, but you'll see now that it's saved and restarted and the communication is live and active, which is a good sign, because our next step would be to connect it to Symphony. So for those that may not have been on previous webinars with us, Symphony is a web-based application, or HTML5 based application. So we do all of our server configuration and programming through a web browser. So this is what you see here is the configuration screen for Senstar Symphony. So I'm going to authenticate here and show you where you would pull the integration for Network Manager in. So the main menu here has 5 different options. We're going to stay with the devices and move from cameras, templates, and hardware to the integrations tab. When we select the integrations tab, you have a blue button that says add hardware. We would select that. And from the add hardware button, it's going to ask us, what device type are you working with today? So for us today, it's the Senstar Network Manager. And now here's a couple of different required fields. You can name it whatever you want. You could say Fiber Patrol Network Manager, and that's always going to be the network manager type is network manager. You would put in the IP address of the network manager that you're working with. And then you would need to put in that unit ID. So if you remember, I told you it was important to pay attention to what unit ID you were working with. And we are working with unit ID 1, so we would input unit ID number 1. Okay? So from there, if you have the IP address put in, you'll see here it says connect to device. I've connected to this device previously, so I'm just going to go to the one that I have brought in already. But you'll see here now that is all the information is input as needed. You can then connect to the device. So once you've connected to a device, Network Manager, I call mine the sim because it's a simulation, you'll have this nice green banner that shows that you're connected. And then underneath that banner that's showing that you're connected, you'll have your sources. And I have a Flex Zone 60, which is what I'm working with in my simulator today. And I want to bring in, I haven't yet, I've checked them. I want to bring in zones 1 through 4. So if you have other trouble alarms, or you have other auxiliary inputs that you might want to be working with, or even outputs, you can bring all of those points in. But for our demonstration purposes today, we're just going to be working with the alarms with zones 1 and 2. But I'll bring in all 4 so you can see the status of all of those as well. Okay? So after we've brought in the sources that we want to work with within Symphony, you want to add it into a group. And just because I'm kind of, I like the organization in my device tree, I've created a folder for the network manager devices that I bring into Symphony. And so I've selected that folder as the location that I want this Flex Zone 60 network manager instance to reside in my device tree. Okay. So that's how you would integrate and bring in your network manager into Senstar Symphony. Give it a name, tell it where the IP address is located, give it a unit ID that you're working with. Again, you can have up to 10, so 1 through 10. Then you would save and reconnect to that, and it'll show you a connected status, and then bring in your points for use later on in creating rules. Okay? Once that's done, you come down to the bottom right, the blue save button if you've made any modifications or changes. Let's go ahead and just do that. We'll take an output 1 just so you can see that, and you'll hit the save button. And that'll save that configuration for you. So now you've made the connection and everything is complete. So the hard work is done, and now you get to the fun stuff where you get to utilize those points that you've integrated and brought into Symphony. So I want to spend a minute and show you how to do that. So now that I've got that data flow coming into Senstar Symphony from Network Manager, I need to do something with it. And so to make it usable for an operator visually and to be able to search it later, let's go ahead and create a rule. So by creating rules, we can create that visual representation of a zone that's been breached, or maybe a trouble status on it, and it pulls that up as well for us to make the operators aware that something's going on with the perimeter detection system. Okay, so you'll notice here that I've got a zone 1 alarm, which is a unit ID number 48. So I've already created that one. So let's go ahead and create a new one for zone 2. So all you need to do here is give it a name. So we're just going to name it Network Manager Zone 2 Alarm. And then you need to create an event. So we'll create a new event, and we need to select the device that we want to work with today. And so we've added the Network Manager, and we need the sensors, and we're going to use Zone 2. So I'll make that selection from that cascaded menu here on the left. Once I've selected Zone 2, I say OK. And now it'll bring that Zone 2 and all of those points here and allow me to select what I want to do. I'm not too concerned about trouble or trouble secure. I'm more concerned about my alarms. So I want to receive an alarm. That's going to be my event. So I'm going to select that, and let's give it a name. So Network Manager Zone 2 event, and then we'll save it. And so now we've got the name of the rule, we've created an event, and we need to create an action set now. So what do we want this Zone 2 alarm to do once we go into a state of alarm? So there's a couple of things that I like to do. I want to view other cameras on an alarm, so I want to view my thermal camera that's associated to that zone. I also want to mark that alarm on that same camera, and I want to record it. So these are some of the basic options that we have that you can select. So those are pretty typical. Is you make the association with a camera that might be relatively close so you can get visual verification, and you want to record that. So now here also, you can do a lot of other things. Run commands, send emails, have on-screen instructions, fire relays, run another rule or a program, or even send TCP communication. So there is a lot more that you can do, but for today's demo, we'll keep it quite simple. So now we've made our selections. We'll drop that down and we'll go ahead and save that. Lastly, let's put it on a schedule. We'll just say all day. And now we've created a Zone 2 rule. So we've got that Zone 2 alarm here, which is great. So the work in the configuration screen is now completed. So now that that's been done, we'll go ahead into the Symphony client, and we're going to want to show you the map as well, because there's a large benefit with working within the maps for the integrations to the network manager. So I'm going to go into my substation here, and I'm going to remove some of the existing ones that I had before, and I'm going to bring in the two different zones that I have rules for. So I'm going to have a Zone 1 here, and then I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to add Zone 2 as well. Because what happens with the integration is we have an ability to mark these as not just icons but lines. I'm going to change the weight so it's easier to see. We're going to try to get close to a Senstar blue, and we'll go ahead and modify that line to cover this perimeter. Okay, so this is just very rough. It's not going to be anything super accurate, so just bear with me. We'll do the same thing for Zone 2, change it from an icon to a line. We'll get close to our Senstar blue color, say okay, and then let's change the weight for better visibility. All right, so now we've got the two different zones on a map, and we're going to say okay and save those configurations. So that's great. Now that we've done that, we'll open up map navigation, and I'm going to make this a little bit larger so it's just a bit easier for everybody to see of what happens when you receive an alarm. So let's get back to that substation. Okay, so there's a couple of different things that you're going to see happen here. So the map in these different zones, those are going to go into a state of alarm and start flashing. I also want to point out here on the left-hand side that you'll see that I've got the integration for Network Manager, and it's in a connected status, and the Flex Zone system is okay, meaning it's operational. Zones 1, 2, 3, 4, they're all secure, and the output is deactivated. So you'll notice here under Zone 1, when we put that into a state of alarm, this is going to go into an alarm state. The map will start to flash, and then the alarm console on the right is going to start to cascade down and show all of the incoming alarms that we create from the Network Manager simulator. So I'm going to open this now, and we'll work with the Flex Zone 60, and we'll make sure that we have a Zone 1 target, and we'll put that into a state of an alarm. So now you see the different states change. Here on the left, we're in a state of alarm for Zone 1. You see it flashing red on the map. You'll see here that this asterisk, if you will, with the red indicating dot is the actual point in that ranging detection that has been tripped. So if I move that just a little bit here to the left in the simulator, and I fire that alarm again, you'll see now that point of detection has changed. So this is one of the benefits of integrating Network Manager with Symphony, is you get the point of the breach as well, not just the entire zone flashing at you. Okay, and then lastly, notice the alarm console is changing with the PIDS Zone 1 alarms coming in. So now let's do the same thing for zone 2. Zone 2 fires. We've got zone 1, right? So we can put both of those into a state of alarm, and both of those will flash for you. And once those units here on the left-hand side go back into a secure state, you'll notice that they do not show your alarm status anymore. So those are some of the nice features that you get with the integration. So again, we'll fire off a couple more. Okay, we'll take those back down. And the reason I want to do that is I want to show you as well what happens from a causation standpoint with the camera. So I'm going to relocate my map back over here on the left, since we've spent a bit of time on that. And I'm going to bring in one of the cameras, that loop file that is the thermal camera. Okay, so now you'll see in the timeline, I've got all these red hashes and these indicators that are my alarms. So I'm going to click on one, and I want to show you what that means for you. So at the very bottom left, you'll notice that it says alarm and zone 1. So that is showing the indication that that is the rule that has been tripped, and that's the zone that has been breached. So if we were to go to a zone 2 alarm, so this is still zone 1, zone 2, you'll notice down on the bottom left it says alarm, which is the state that we went into for zone 2, and then it identifies it of what zone has actually been breached. So that's the visual indicator on screen and within the timeline. And then if your operators were working within the alarm console, they could click on any one of those alarms that came through, and it'll pull it right to it. Okay, so they could select it and see the individuals that have actually breached that perimeter fence. One of the other nice things within the Symphony client and the integration, having them on the map, is you could see it visually flashing. You could also then select the camera, and it would pull that camera up for you that's associated with that alarm. Okay, so again, just to quickly review some of the things that you'll get when you integrate Network Manager into Symphony is you get the ranging detection on the map showing you the actual point of the breach. The alarms will be marked in the timeline, so it's much easier to find and filter through the alarms. They'll also be logged here in the alarm console, allowing an operator to simply click on the alarm that had been breached and pull up associated video, as well as the device tree will show the status of your Network Manager integration, the communication status of being okay, and then what state each one of those zones, outputs, and others might be in. Okay, and that's the long and the short of our presentation today. So we've slid in a bit under the 30-minute time line that we had lined out for it, and we really appreciate you joining us and learning how to integrate the Senstar Network Manager into Senstar Symphony, the SMS. Thanks again for your time, and we'll keep the line open for additional questions that may come through. And we appreciate you joining us on another one of our e-seminar series today. Are CEUs and certificates available for the webinar? Currently not at this time. They're not. Can the Network Manager software be used with other head-end equipment such as Victor Unified Systems or Secure 9000? Yes, it can, and there's a lot of different ways that you can use excuse me, Network Manager to interface with other third-party products. For that specifically, Ray, you can contact any one of us, and it's a bit of a deeper dive on how to do that, but absolutely that is a possibility. Can the map display the exact distance info, specifically the meters of the zone that was detected? No, not at this time. It just displays the visual representation on the map. It doesn't actually display like the distance down that zone, like 10 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters, etc. Good question though. Can Symphony be used to arm and disarm and bypass the PIDS zones? It's a long answer, cheapers. How do I shorten that down? Yes. I guess that's how you would shorten that down. Ron, you can contact us and we could talk to you about how to do that. There's There's obviously, as you saw, all the different points that we have available to us through the integration. Those are all brought into Symphony. So if you needed to fire an auxiliary output or relay or anything that would, shunt or halt or terminate for a duration, however you want to run that, those are possibilities through Symphony, and they could be directly done through the application. So yes, the short answer is yes. The long answer is, okay, well, what do we have on site and how can we utilize that and accomplish it? But yes, we could do it. Does the acknowledgement or reset of Symphony zone alarms pass the instructions to acknowledge and reset the PIDS system? So if you remember back, we're receiving data from the network manager. So we're not pushing the data of the acknowledgement from Symphony to the other applications that we have for Senstar perimeter products. So what would happen is internally within Symphony, if you acknowledge the alarm and archive it, then it goes away. But it doesn't reset the status of the alarm on the fence line. So for example, if we had zone 1 alarm, you acknowledged it and said, yeah, okay, it was just a tumbleweed that hit it. Come out here in the West, and so we get a lot of those. Tumbleweed hits the fence 3-4 times, it sends it to a state of alarm. The camera turns on and you go, just a nuisance alarm, right? Probably a bad example because we can actually tone those out so those don't cause an alarm, but let's just say it happened. If you acknowledge it in Symphony and it's still in a state of alarm, it'll stay showing as a state of alarm, just that you'd have acknowledged it. When it goes back to a secure state, from the sensor technologies standpoint, then it'll send that communication back out to Symphony through Network Manager, and then we will go back into a secure state. So you saw as I disabled that alarm, the state went back to secure. Okay, so that would be the same thing, is we can't manually put it back into a secure state from Symphony. Sounds good.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining us. Have a happy Easter weekend.